Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. It's week 7, which means this is our final Hot Takes episode for the regular season. My name is TJ, and of course, I am joined by Soddle. Soddle, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, TJ. Of course, mixed emotions coming off the last regular day of the season on Sunday, as there always will be. We've got to send some players to playoffs, potentially send some people to Worlds, but of course there's a few relegations, a couple of retirements as well, which has left us all, I think, reminiscing about the past. But I'm looking forward to the future, looking forward to this episode of Hot Takes and our customary pointless arguments, TJ.
That's right, and because of those feelings that we felt over the course of the weekend this weekend, we're going to make this kind of a tribute episode to the players that were relegated or retired, kind of go hand in hand in some cases. Obviously, we're not going to mention every player that was relegated, but you can take away from this episode that we had a general tribute feeling towards players that were relegated. There you go. And of course, I would be remiss to not mention that Soddle and I brush my shoulders off, won the predictions again. That's right, you're incredible co-hosts of Hot Takes.
Yep.
Just keep winning predictions and nobody can stop us.
Can we talk about, in our team of professional Hearthstone analysts, we're the only two that can consistently beat the rate at which you would be correct by rolling a dice? What is everyone else doing? It's not that hard. Just pick the good players and the good lineups. It's really easy.
A lot of times it's not even about the players.
Yeah.
You don't even have to look at the players.
True.
Look at the players at the end.
Yeah.
Look at the lineups
Yep.
and then cover the names, and then at the end uncover who the best lineup is. And oh, cool.
Yep.
Except for Gabby. You just always pick Gabby.
That's exactly. Final note, by the way, I actually went back and tracked since we've done work from home stuff. We've done we've done predictions 5 times, and actually over the course of all 5 of those sets of predictions, we are exactly tied lifetime in terms of work from home predictions. So there's actually even more on the line for playoffs than you might have first thought, TJ.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some high stakes there.
Yeah.
Could end up breaking the tie, which could give us material for next week's episode of Hot Takes, which will be our last one for some time, considering GM is not until next year. So we'll cross that bridge when we get over. For now, it's time to jump into some Hot Takes. Hot take number 1. Eddie is the best Hearthstone player to have never competed at a world championship.
Incredible. Where did this idea come from? That's such a good hot take. How did we come up with this stuff? Absolutely unbelievable. I think it's a good talking point. Of course, again, with the nature of the tribute show that we have, Eddie recently relegated, announced his retirement before that fact anyway. You can't fire me, I quit, that kind of thing. No, I'm kidding. But I think it did spur discussion based on something that you said last week about who's on that list, right? And to me, it feels like Eddie, there should be a better name than Eddie, but when we started thinking about it, most of the top players that you consider top players have been to World Championships, and that's kind of misleading, right? Because I think also a lot of the people that we think are the best players, we think are the best players because of their performances at World Championships, right? So it's a little bit circular when you get into it. But a couple of names just to throw out there straight away. Gabby. I mean, he's young, but technically, as of right now, he hasn't been to a World Championship, and I think he is probably the best player in the world. But I think one very interesting one to come up with, just right before we came on air, was Zixo. I think Zixo had a fantastic Hearthstone career when it came to winning invitationals and also large field tournaments as well. Seat Story Cup winner, phenomenal ladder stats as well over the time where he was playing constructed Hearthstone. Just never quite put it together in terms of the first party Hearthstone tournaments, but I think he's an absolute legend of the game, and I'd definitely throw his hat into the ring.
Yeah, I think, Gabby he's only been around for he's been around for 16 years, but in the competitive Hearthstone scene, he hasn't been around for that long. So he hasn't really. This is his first year that he's had a real shot at it, even. So it'd be impressive if he actually ended up qualifying this year. But looking back on players sort of the past, RDU is a good one. A lot of players or a lot of fans nowadays look at RDU and think of him as kind of a meme because all he does is stream BGs all day and has mediocre results in Grandmasters. But back in the day, RDU was considered one of the best constructed players for quite a long time, and a lot of his success came through open systems. Until we got to the point where every Hearthstone tournament was invited, but those were some dark times. Alutemu is another one. He hasn't always gone by Alutemu. That was a change for Grandmasters. Was Machamp before that. I don't even know if I'm allowed to mention that. He had to change his name for that reason, but there it is. You can bleep it out if you need to.
Come at us. Machamp. There you go. Bleep it twice.
Yeah, Machamp. Bleep it all. This episode's going to be unusable. But yeah, he's had some incredible results, especially recently. But even before that, we saw him participate in like the Asia Pacific like championships and playoffs nonstop. He made it on our prediction board many times, which is the ultimate test of who's a skilled player if they make it on the prediction board. So those are some older ones. Blaize as well, even though I sort of lump him in a similar category as Gabby, but it feels like Blaize has been around for a long time now because he had that streak beginning of last year, of his Masters Tour victories. But he's first propping up in Texas, Arlington, right? Masters Tour Arlington?
Yep.
So that's a good name to throw out there as well.
And I think, final note as well, like, there are some absolute ladder monsters. Like, back in the day, like, people who are new to Hearthstone, people who've only been, like, playing for a year or two maybe and are only familiar with the Grandmasters system, might not understand how competitive ladder used to be. But, like, a top 16, top 25, top 10 finish on ladder used to actually be incredibly difficult because there were several hundred players fighting for those spots. So there's some players like Crane, Dead Draw, Fibonacci, for example, that have absolutely insane ladder stats when it comes to average finishes, with many of those coming in an era where there were hundreds of players competing for that as well, but just never really, hit that streak in a tournament. But we're not here to hide it. This is the nature of what we do. It's a card game, right? Like, sometimes you can be consistently brilliant for a number of years and just not hit that run of form in one tournament to make that big top 8, top 4, top 2, that big tournament win that people will remember. So that's just a few names that I just wanted to also throw out there because they've been brilliant Hearthstone players for a very, very long time.
But it is hot take, so we have to have a resolution. So we can all agree here that, yep, Eddie is the best one.
Sure.
out of all of those.
Screw Zixo, am I right?
Yeah. Moving on. Cool. Glad we had an easy resolution that one. Oh, also, angrily tweeted us who you think it is. Viewers at home. We appreciate that. We may have missed somebody, so let's hear them. But let's move on to the second hot take of the week, sort of another tribute. There will never be another competitive Hearthstone player like Tice.
Ouch. Ouch, indeed. Yeah, I think the Tice relegation hurt a lot of people because Tice is, probably the biggest competitive player that we still have left in terms of the huge audience that he carries with him, with one of the biggest streams in the game or whatever. But I do think it's important. It's why it's very deliberately phrased like this, right? There will never be another player like Tice. Tice wasn't Tice when he started out, right? When he was just a kid winning Zotac Cups or whatever it was way back in the day, or ESL King of the Hill, is that where the streak came from? Something along those lines. He was in the position now that we see like newly promoted Grandmasters in, right? He was the new kid on the block. No one really knew anything about him. I think the difference is back then is that the community as a whole and the competitive side of Hearthstone and the tournament structure and so on was just doing a much better job of allowing people to get to know people like Tice. And I think to say there will never be another Tice is a little bit unfair to some of the players that we have right now. The Gabbies, the Blaize, the Fleds, for example, young up-and-coming players who watched Tice doing all the things that Tice did and then built a career off it themselves, became inspired, became some of the very, very best players in the world. The issue is that it's our job to allow you to get to know those people so you connect with them. And I think that's happening to a degree with the likes of Alutemu, with Gabby, with Blaize, because they're now out there streaming, they're gaining numbers at a very rapid rate, they have burgeoning, growing social media presences, and streams. People do clearly care about them and want to get invested. But it takes time, right? Like, there will always be, in any activity, in any sport, in any competition, there will be eras, and the greats will retire, and they will cycle out, and there needs to be a young undercurrent of players to replace them. And I think we do have that, but it's our job to, allow you, to give you time to get invested in those people, and hopefully there will be another Tice, and you will be just as sad 20 years from now when Gabby, at the ripe old age of 26 years old, has to retire from competitive Hearthstone.
20 years from now, Gabby's going to be 26?
Correct, yeah.
Weird. He's a lot younger than I thought he was. Cool. That makes it even much more impressive. Kind of going to go the other way a little bit. I don't know. I don't think, I guess, is hot takes after all. I don't think there will be a player that has that type of longevity after growing a stream and having success outside of pure competitive play. There hasn't been anyone that's done it as long as Tice has. Even though that's, he got relegated as potentially coming to an end, I just don't think there's going to be another player that does that for as long as Tice does. Has managing that type of growth and becoming a big streamer and this big personality within the community, while also still staying near the top of competitive play. I don't think that's going to happen, right? It's been 5 years since that is kind of taken place, since Tice's growth exploded and he had to balance both. And so I'm going to say no. I'm going to say there's probably not going to be another player like Tice, at least to the lengths that Tice went through. Maybe I guess Dog is a good example. Dog went out on top.
Yeah.
Dog could have
100%,
been a player that continued that success through and through.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't, because it's very tough to balance, right? And so doing it until the very bitter end, I just don't think there's going to be someone quite like Tice.
I think if there's one thing Tice does need commendations for, if we are going to bring this back round to a tribute, is that he just kept competing for as long as he did, because he absolutely didn't need to, right? Like, let's be honest. The amount of money that Tice could take down from being a competitive Hearthstone player was peanuts compared to what he can rake in from everywhere else that he has going on. So there's only one possible reason why he did that, and that's because he loved it. And that, if not anything else, demands an enormous pat on the back, right? And sure, that might always be the end game for competitive Hearthstone, right? That people will then go on to become streamers or whatever else, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have value, and that doesn't mean that people will still use it as that vehicle. And as long as people are hungry to be the best, as Tice was for so long, I think we'll be all right.
We'll be all right. We'll be all right. And of course, as always, Salo, you should know this. I'm willing to be proven wrong on this, and I hope I am. And I'll take it super well. I won't try and change the rules or anything like that. Historically, I've never done that, right? So why would I start now?
So in 20 years, we'll check back. I'll give you a call, and then we can actually resolve whether or not there's been another Hearthstone player like Tice, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sounds good. Mm-hmm. Sounds good. But that does it for our sort of relegation tribute episode for Hot Takes. Obviously, we have the playoffs coming up for this weekend. Playoffs! I can't say playoffs without doing that voice. So make sure everybody tunes in. Final spots for the World Championship are up for grabs, so it should be a good time. A lot of high-stakes action going on in the Hearthstone universe next week within Grandmasters. So, Sottle, not even going to let you get a final word in, because this is the end of Hot Takes. We'll see you next week for more Sottle and TJ arguing about nothing.